All right, everybody, we are back coming off of UFC 315 with Jack Della Maddalena defeating Belal Muhammad to become the new welterweight champion, whilst Valentina Shevchenko defended her championship. We went 8-2 on the YouTube picks, 10-2 overall on the card for a very, very, very good night. And we're looking to continue momentum and continue pushing forward into UFC Vegas 106, which features a very, very intriguing main event in the welterweight division between the former welterweight title challenger and the man who pushed Khamzat Chimaev to the brink in Gilbert Burns, the man who almost had a win against the now welterweight champion in JDM in Gilbert Burns, taking on the rising, undefeated, up-and-coming contender, the Ecuadorian Michael Morales. So we have Burns versus Morales coming up this weekend. So without any further ado, let's get this started and step into the ring. All right, we could talk about last weekend's card a little bit before we get into the predictions for this week. Yeah, we had a pretty solid night. Jasmine finishing in round one made that, fight card go from a incredible night to a pretty damn good night. Yeah, I did not expect her to get her out of there in the first round, but that's just what Jasmine Jasudavicius does. That's my girl. I always pick her, ride or die. We picked the submission, which I think was plus 320. We had JDM by KO in 3-4-5. I think on the podcast I picked round 4. I mean, you don't get much closer than a KO there, but it goes to a decision. He looks great. Belal came back in the 5th round, came back in the 4th round, and JDM really pushed it in the end of the 5th to seal that round. I scored it 4-1, JDM 49-46, only giving Belal the 4th round. I thought that he did enough to win that round by pushing forward and getting on the pressure. Valentina and Manon went pretty much exactly how I expected. I actually expected the fight to play out exactly like that first round, but I knew on the feet it was going to be competitive. I knew it was going to be a chess match. There was going to be a lot of clinching. There was going to be a lot of fakes and feints with not too much happening. I think that knockdown in the 4th round really sealed the fight for Valentina. I think if she doesn't get that knockdown, it probably doesn't go her way. Yeah, in terms of picks, like I said, 10 out of 12 on the full card, 8-2 on the YouTube predictions because I didn't break down every single fight. But, yeah, it was a pretty good night. A lot of the fights went the way I expected. Yeah, I ended up hitting a 5-leg parlay for plus 9,872 or something like that. It was Mark Andre inside the distance, Jasmine Jasudavicius inside the distance, Ayman Zahabi moneyline, Valentina Shevchenko moneyline, and Jack Della Maddalena moneyline. So the Zahabi one got real close. The Zahabi one looked like it was going to make everything go up into dust, but he did what he needed to do. He survived, and that was one of the best fights of the night. The main event probably takes the cake for the best fight of the night, but from top to bottom, I heard a lot of people shitting on that card, going into it. And I think they all got shut up pretty heavily because I think that card was very solid. Was every fight a barn burner? No. But there was a lot of very solid fights on that card, and the main event really made up for it. So, yeah, I mean, we talk about this card. Why not, right? We got to move on to next week. We're going to kick it off in the flyweight division with Yusuff Park taking on Carlos Hernandez. I'm going to be honest, guys. This fight kind of plays out like 60-40 to me. I don't have a strong lean one way or another. I think Hernandez is viable to get hurt in almost every single one of his fights. The guy's got really solid scrambles, really solid wrestling, a good jab, a decent left hook, a solid 1-2. Like, his boxing fundamentals are very solid. And looking at this fight, I would say he probably has the more technical striking than Yusuff Park. I think Park might have more power. But I do think the scrambling ability of Carlos Hernandez might be able to get him the win here. And I kind of see it similar to the Ray Saruya fight, but with Yusuff Park having less success. I think staying on the feet, there's always that chance that Park could land a big shot and rock Hernandez, but I don't see him knocking him out. And with me not seeing Park knock him out, I think he can make it competitive on the feet. Like I said, I think the basics are going to work for Hernandez, right? The jab, the left hook, the 1-2, and I think he wins most of the wrestling exchanges. Like, maybe he gets taken down once or twice, but his scrambles are good. He doesn't really settle for position. He moves well. He tries to always get to that advantageous position, even if he's the one on his back. He's a very active fighter, and I think with the UFC experience, which everybody likes to talk about, I don't really like to use that term too much, but I think it does matter here. I think with that UFC experience, it is going to play into factor here. I think the fight's going to be close. I think there will be portions where Hyung-Sung Park does rock Carlos Hernandez. I think Hernandez is going to come back and probably get it back in the mid portion of the second round and into the third round. And in my opinion, I think it really comes down to Hernandez pushing that pace, being able to step on the gas more in the second and third round and end up winning this fight by decision. So I think the fight goes the distance. I wouldn't be surprised if Park landed a KO. Because, like I said, I think the durability of Hernandez is a little bit, up to question. You never know. He could get rocked. We've seen him get hurt. We've seen him get wobbled. But I think he stays safe here. I think he wins. I think he makes it competitive. I think he wins the second and third round by pushing a higher pace than Park can keep up with. So give me Carlos Hernandez to win. I'm going to go 29-28 unanimous decision. I think he gets this one done. And, this is a solid fight to start the podcast off with for sure. Right, next fight up is in the strawweight division. You have a battle between Elise Reed and Denise Gomes. Realistically, I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this fight. I think you understand why. Women's MMA is going to women's MMA. It's always going to be, it should go one way, but the fight IQ and the decision-making makes it a lot closer than it needs to be, and, things like that. I think this is a tee-up spot. I think this is a thank you present for Denise Gomes. And I think she's going to finish Elise Reed. Now, expecting a finish in a women's MMA fight, never something you want to expect, but we've seen Elise Reed get submitted. We saw her get submitted by Lupita Godinez, and we've seen her get, I believe, KO'd as well. Been submitted, been finished a few times, at least in the UFC, and I kind of think Denise Gomes has the perfect style to finish a girl like Elise Reed. I think she's a lot more powerful than Reed on the feet. She's a lot more crisp and technical on the feet. I think the only way Reed wins is if she's able to kind of poke and prod and pick her apart and then stay out of the way of the big power shots and then get takedowns at the end of rounds to seal it and maybe push a higher pace in the third round and really steal that third round and maybe get a split decision. I think that's kind of Elise Reed's only win equity. But to be honest, I kind of see this, like I said, as a give-me fight for Denise Gomes. But it's women's MMA. You never know how it's really going to go. But in this one, I'm going to take Gomes to find a finish, and I'm actually going to take Denise Gomes by submission. I played her by sub in the fight against Eduardo Mora, I believe. I think it was I don't think it was the Eduardo Mora fight. Let me check. I could be wrong. I'm going to pull this up really quick. Denise Gomes. It was Karolina Kowalkiewicz. So I played her by sub in the Kowalkiewicz fight. I think it was plus 1,000. She locked up a guillotine at one point. Looked like she was really going to go for it and just decided not to. But, she kind of dominated that fight. It was a unanimous decision. It wasn't close. I think it's a similar situation here, but I do think she finishes Elise Reed. I'm going to say she rocks her, and then she jumps on her to get the finish. Reed jumps up to her feet and gets caught in the guillotine choke. So give me Denise Gomes to win this fight. Second round guillotine choke submission. I know a lot of people aren't going to be too eager to play the sub for Gomes, but she does go for it, and we saw her attempt at least one or two against Kowalkiewicz. I think she can find a way to rock Elise Reed and get a sub on a girl who's been subbed before, so I'm going to take it, and that's probably going to be a pretty big number in terms of the betting. But in terms of a prediction, if I was going to pick a finish for her, I think I would take the sub anyway. She did get that submission against Yasmin Uruguay. She can rock her opponents and look for those subs off those rocks, and I think that's similar to what we're going to see here. She's going to hurt Elise Reed with a big shot in the second round. Reed's going to try to panic shoot. She's going to get caught in the guillotine and get submitted. So give me Denise Gomes, second round guillotine choke submission, and we're going to move on to the next fight. All right, up next, you got a battle in the lightweight division between Jared Flash Gordon taking on Thiago Moises. This fight is a pick'em in terms of the betting market, and in a breakdown scenario, I think this is as close to 50-50 as you get. I think Jared Gordon is going to be on the pressure. He's going to be pushing forward. He's going to be getting in the face of Moises. And I think there is a scenario where he could possibly start to slow down Moises. start to put the volume on him, ripping with the jabs, the 1-2s, the left hooks, the rear uppercuts, start to really attack the high guard of Moises, who likes to keep his hands very high and traditional. I think Gordon could have some success in throwing multi-shot combinations to that high guard of Moises. But I also think the counter calf kicks to the inside and outside of the leg of Jared Gordon are going to be there. I think the body kicks are going to be there, and I think the wrestling is really where the biggest difference is. Now, I know he didn't get submitted by Paddy Pimblett, but he did get taken down at a certain point, and I think Moises is a lot higher level of a grappler than Gordon. I don't think he's easy to hold down. I don't think he's easy to take down, but I think if somebody can do it, it's probably a guy like Thiago Moises. He's training at American Top Team. They are a high-level striking gym, but also very, very solid in terms of the wrestling, and I think they're going to have a wrestling-heavy game plan here. I think they're going to stay on the outside, use low kicks, use the jab to kind of get Gordon to bite on it and come in for his multi-shot combinations. Primarily a boxer is Gordon. You don't see a lot of body kicks. You don't see a lot of kicks to the head. Gordon is primarily going to be looking to win this fight by moving forward, slipping his head left and right, trying to close the pocket and get on the inside and rip those multi-shot combinations. Like I said, exposing the high guard, really making that his path to victory by bop, 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 rip the body, boom, 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 uppercut hook, bop, 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 downstairs, back upstairs, and just out-voluming Moises and trying to break him late. I think Moises is older. I think Gordon is also older, though, so I think the age and the damage and things like that, I think that kind of cancels each other out. And this comes down to who is the better fighter. And going into it, I wanted to take Jared Gordon. I thought that the boxing and the volume and the things I already mentioned were really going to push me to pick him, but I'm not going to do it because I think that on the feet, it's going to be competitive, but I think the low kicks are going to slow down Jared Gordon, and I think the wrestling of Thiago Moises, even if he doesn't get, a bunch of takedowns, he can push Gordon up against the cage, look to get that inside or outside reap. If he can't get the takedown, he can shuck him forward, take his back, put the one hook in, try to take the back and land some good shots. I think Gordon does have a chance to finish this fight late, and that would be the only thing I would be a little worried about, is that maybe he survives an early storm, but Gordon continues to push the pace, continues to push the pressure, continues to put Moises on the back foot, which we know, if you're not used to being a counter striker, that makes your gas tank deplete a lot faster. I think Gordon could put that volume, put that pace, put that pressure on him, and potentially get a KO in the third round. So Gordon round 3 does, raise my eyebrows a little bit because I think it's live. But I think the more well-rounded fighter is Moises. I think Moises is going to know that he's either got to be all the way out or just at kicking range, or all the way in and using his wrestling and superior jiu-jitsu. I think he does enough. I think he chops the leg kicks. I think he lands some good shots in the boxing, maybe causes some cuts to Jared Gordon. I think he gets some takedowns, and I think he wins a competitive decision. Give me Thiago Moises to get the job done here. 29-28 unanimous decision, winning 2-1. But like I said, I think Gordon round 3 is a sneaky way to play it. If you're going to take Moises, if you're looking for a finish for Moises, I would think round 2, round 3 submission would be your best bet. But I think the fight goes the distance. I think it's competitive. I think Gordon is going to push the pace. I think Gordon is going to get that volume off. But the kicks to the inside and outside leg, the takedowns in the cage wrestling, I think is going to be enough for Moises to get the job done here. So give me Thiago Moises, 29-28 unanimous decision, and let's move on to the next one. All right, next fight up is in the lightweight division. You have the UFC newcomer who fought under Tough Enough Fury FC, and now he's making his UFC debut, taking on Gabe Green in Mateus Jaguar Camilo. Obviously, Gabe Green fought a lot of competitors inside the UFC. His most recent fight, he got knocked out in the first round after a back-and-forth, slugfest with Brian the Butcher Battle. No shame in that game. Lost the decision to Daniel Rodriguez. I mean, he's been in there with a lot of competitors, and when it comes to UFC experience, that is heavily on the side of the UFC veteran at this point in Gabe Green. But coming off a loss and being gone for, I believe, 2.5 years, you don't know what type of Gabe Green we're going to get. What we do know is that he keeps a high guard, he moves forward, he throws punches in bunches, he has decent power. He's an okay grappler, but he really thrives on pressure. He thrives on pushing forward, thrives on landing, boxing combinations. Primarily a boxer, but will throw kicks in there as well, but likes to work with his hands. I think Gabe Green is going to come in here and look to put on an exciting fight. but I think the ring rust is going to be a big problem against this guy in Mateus Camilo. I like Camilo. I like what I've seen from him. I think it's Camilo, so I'm going to say Camilo. I think Camilo has very good shot selections. He throws good combinations, picks his shots well. 1-2, rip to the body, uppercut up the middle, uppercut, left hook, knee to the head, jab, left hook, right low kick. He reminds me a little bit of like a more dangerous version of a Myron Santos. The way they move in and out, and then he can also push forward and pressure. He had that win over Dorian Ramos back in September of 2023. We saw Ramos actually compete on the Contender Series in his last fight. And not his last fight, second to last fight, losing to Austin Bashi via rear naked choke in the second round. Then he goes and he fights Michael Aswell, where again he loses a unanimous decision. Michael Aswell was on the Contender Series as well, and he lost that razor-thin decision to Bogdan Grad, where a lot of people thought that Michael Aswell did enough to win. I like Camilo. I like the fact that he pushes forward. I like his pressure. I like his boxing and his kickboxing combinations, punctuating the punches with the kicks. And in his fight against Dorian Ramos, he was winning the striking exchanges, but then he was starting to get pushed back. He was starting to get pressured. Ramos with that high guard, walking him down, trying to tire him out, ripping shots to the body, ripping up top. It looked like he was going to be kind of pushed to a breaking point in the second and in the third round. And then he ends up locking up a triangle armbar off of his back, which shows you that he's not just a technical striker. He's not just an educated striker. But if you take him to the ground, he can threaten you with submissions and look to finish the fight there as well. I like guys who are not only good from the top side when they grapple, but also good off the bottom. And I think that's what I like about this Camilo guy, man. He opened, when I looked at it, it was minus 180, minus 190. He's like minus 200, minus 220. I honestly think Camilo is going to come into this fight, and I think he's going to get a finish. I think that he's going to be able to compete with Gabe Green on the feet. I think that he's going to threaten with submissions if Green does try to use the wrestling and get some takedowns, because he is a solid wrestler. Gabe Green, solid boxing, not the best defense, and I think Camilo has, multi-shot combinations and could find the opening on a guy who's coming off a KO loss, getting knocked out in the first round. We could see a reinvented Gabe Green. We could see a guy who uses that veteranship, who uses that UFC experience to push Camilo into the later rounds and just not allow him to sneak out that finish. But one way or another, I think Mateus Camilo finds the knockout here. I think he could find a sub. I think it could be a club and sub. But I'm going to say he finds the KO. I think he's just a lot more technical than Gabe Green. I think he picks his shots better. I think he manages range and distance better. He punctuates his combinations with his hands. With his kicks, he can go from hands to kicks, back to hands. He's got good strikes inside the clinch. Like I said, picking his shots when he's mixing up his combos. Jab, cross, lead hook to the body, rear uppercut, elbows inside the clinch, knees. This guy's dirty, this guy's nasty, and I like him. Even though he's young, even though it's the UFC debut, even though a lot of these UFC debutants are losing, I'm going to say Camilo gets the job done. Give me Mateus Jaguar Camilo to get the job done via second round TKO against Gabe Green. I think he's going to hurt him, and I think he's going to put him away. And I don't know what we're going to see from Camilo in the UFC going forward, but I think he's going to win this fight, and I think they gave him a solid matchup here. All right, next fight up is in the featherweight division. You have a banger between Juicy J. Erosa taking on Melquizael Costa. Guys, this is another one that's a very good fight, but it's also very, very tricky to pick. A lot of people are going to think the streaking contender in Costa, the performance he had against Christian Rodriguez, he hurt him with shots inside the clinch, those elbows, those knees, really solid inside that Muay Thai clinch, the front kicks to the body. And a lot of people are going to think, well, Julian Erosa has been KO'd a bunch of times. He's been hurt. He's been rocked. He's been put down. But, man, I think Julian Erosa, I think the chin is always going to be a concern when you're looking at a guy like Juicy J. But I think that he kind of has fixed a little bit of those chin issues, and he knows how to instill his will on his opponent. He knows how to push that pace. He knows how to get the opponent on the back foot. He knows how to make the opponent uncomfortable. He knows how to make them shoot when they shouldn't be shooting, and he can open himself up or open up his opportunities to jump the guillotine, the arm-in guillotine. He's very solid with attacking the neck. We saw him submit Christian Rodriguez with a guillotine choke, and that was something that Costa wasn't able to do. Costa actually getting caught in an anaconda choke early in that fight, coming back and then ended up winning that fight. But in the third round, Christian Rodriguez pushed the pace, pushed forward, was getting him on the back foot, and was tiring out Melquizael Costa. Hurt him in the second round, hurt him bad, almost got him out of there. Like I said, with a lot of those strikes in the clinch. I think Costa, his striking gets a little bit overrated, but he's got a good jab. He uses his lead hand very well, and he's got those little front snapping teep kicks to the body. And I think that's where he has a lot of his success, is from those front kicks to the body, ripping those rear kicks to the body, the lead kicks to the body. We saw him destroy Austin Lingo with his body kicks, and that was one of the first times we really saw him, explore the striking inside the UFC, or explore his striking and his striking combinations inside the UFC. I think that Costa could find a KO here if it gets into a dirty, nasty fight, and maybe he lands an uppercut in the clinch, or he lands an elbow over the top. He can hurt Erosa and potentially get him out of there. I think he could drop Erosa, jump on him, and then take his neck and get a submission. But I think if there's a submission in this fight, I have a sneaky feeling it might come from the side of Julian Erosa. I've picked against Melquizael Costa with the Christian Rodriguez fight. I picked against him in the Andre Fili fight. I've never been the biggest Mel Costa fan. He's been proving me wrong. He showed how good he was against Christian Rodriguez, even though he did get tired in that third round, and Rodriguez was pushing the pace, but he wasn't able to get him out of there. I think Costa's improved. I think that both of these fighters have improved at a pretty steady rate, but you have to give Costa a little bit of a heavier advantage in the improvements because, beating Darren Elkins isn't that impressive at this point. We knew Erosa was going to come in there. We knew he was going to look to strike, maybe lock up a submission, but he didn't do it. I think either of these fighters could get a sub. I think Costa could lock up a submission if he rocks Erosa, or if Erosa shoots a takedown. I also think Erosa could hurt Costa on the feet with like a knee or an uppercut or a front kick up the middle, rock him, and then force him to shoot and potentially grab his neck and get a submission. I think if they do get a submission in this fight, it's more than likely going to be from the front headlock for either guy, either a guillotine for Costa, guillotine for Erosa, or a Darce choke on the side of Julian Erosa, where I think a lot of people forget he at one point was locking up Darce chokes left and right inside the UFC, and I think that's a sneaky way to take a look at this fight, is maybe Erosa with that long frame and the jiu-jitsu and wrestling style of Costa, he might be able to lock up a Darce choke, considering Christian Rodriguez almost submitted him early with that anaconda choke in their fight. I think Costa is getting better. I think his striking has improved. I think he does have durability concerns, but I would be more concerned about the durability of Julian Erosa because, yes, he got rocked in the fight against Rodriguez and came back, but, he came back in terms of the grappling, not so much in terms of the striking, but he was starting to walk forward and push the pace and not really care. I think this fight's a coin flip. I think a lot of people are going to side with the favorite in Mel Costa, and it makes sense why. He does have multiple opportunities to win this fight, but I'm going to say Juicy J finds another finish, man. I know I've picked against Costa a bunch of times. I told myself I wasn't going to do it here. I'm going to do it. I'm going to take Julian Erosa to get this done by a submission. I think he's going to rock Costa and then grab his neck in a Darce choke and submit him. I just see a scenario where Erosa's getting beat up. He's getting hit on the feet, but he's coming forward. He's pushing the pace. He's kind of getting Costa on the back foot and getting those combinations off. And I think Julian Erosa is going to potentially get that submission. And that's what I'm going to take. So give me Julian Erosa, second round Darce choke submission. I know submitting a guy like Costa, it's kind of like, whoa, you really think that's going to happen? I like the long frame and the length of Erosa. I think he could rock him on the feet with those knees, with a potential front kick. I do think Costa's live for a knockout, and even if he drops him, maybe a club and sub scenario. I do not think this fight goes the distance, though. And that's probably how I would look to play it in terms of a betting perspective. His fight doesn't go the distance because I don't think it goes all 3 rounds. But I'm going to go with the guy who I think, both these guys are streaking contenders. This is a good fight. But I'm going to say Erosa pulls it off here. Maybe I'm crazy. Maybe I'm thinking too much into this. But I see Erosa finding a way to win in a fight that he's probably losing up until he gets that finish. So give me Julian Erosa to win. I'm going to go with a second round Darce choke submission. I think he catches the neck of Costa and gets that submission. So yeah, give me Juicy J. I'm going to take the dog here. I think the fight should be lined a little bit closer. And yeah, I don't think it goes the distance. But give me Juicy J, second round Darce choke. All right, guys. So this is a fight that was actually supposed to be talked about earlier, but I didn't have the graphic up and I completely passed over it. It's a battle in the featherweight division between former Contender Series alum in Yadier Del Valle taking on Connor Matthews. I'm going to be honest. I think this is a winnable fight for Matthews just because I don't like the defensive irresponsibility of Yadier Del Valle. I think Del Valle leaves himself open. He throws himself into the fire with big hooks, with big straights from that southpaw stance, elbows and knees, right over the top, right up the middle. And he throws with big power. He throws heavy. He throws big kicks to the body, big kicks to the head. Everything this guy throws on the feet is solid. Everything is powerful. On the ground, he immediately looks to take your neck if you shoot a bad takedown. He immediately looks to grab that guillotine, immediately looks to jump for a guillotine. If he's on the ground, he'll fight for those submissions and he'll look to submit you. This guy is a finisher, but I don't think he's the greatest in terms of technical ability. He likes to make it dirty. He likes to make it nasty. He doesn't mind if it gets into a brawl. And I think Connor Matthews is the sharper striker. I would say that his jabs, his 1-2s, the straight punches are probably a little bit better. He is primarily known as a grappler, a lot of takedowns, a lot of taking the back, looking for submissions and stuff like that. But, he just hasn't found success in the UFC. They gave him Jose Delgado. Delgado put him away. I kind of see a similar situation here with Del Valle. I think Delgado is a lot better, but I think Del Valle is still dangerous. He still, offers finishing opportunities in terms of the grappling with the takedowns or with the front chokes from the front headlock, and he's got power on the feet to the point where he could crack him and knock him out. And if he can't knock him out with one shot, he could get into the clinch, get into that dirty boxing range, and land an elbow over the top or an uppercut or a knee up the middle if Matthews tries to shoot a takedown. And I think Del Valle is going to get a finish here. I'm not too concerned, or I'm not too sure, I should say, whether it's going to be a submission or a knockout. And like I said, I think Matthews, if he can stay behind his jab, if he can pump that 1-2, if he can cut his angles and stay to the outside of that lead foot, then I think he can make it more competitive because I think Del Valle is very hittable. He's going to be caught with those straight punches. He's going to be caught by a sharp striker, and there's potential that Matthews can do it, but I just don't see it, man. I don't think Matthews is technically UFC level. I don't really think Del Valle is UFC level either, but I think he has more of that finishing upside in this fight, and I'm going to go with the guy who I think has more opportunity to finish the fight, which is the big favorite in Yadier Del Valle. So give me Del Valle to get a knockout in this fight. I'm going to say he catches Matthews inside the clinch with a knee or an elbow in the second round, puts him down, and gets him out of there. Give me Yadier Del Valle, second round TKO. I think this guy just throws with a lot of power. He throws himself into the fire. He could get caught, but I think he's live to get that guillotine choke finish too. But I'm going to say he gets into that dirty boxing range, gets into the clinch, lands elbows and uppercuts, and stuns him with a big uppercut or a knee and drops him and gets him out of there. So give me Yadier Del Valle to make good on the UFC debut via second round TKO in this fight. All right, next fight up is in the middleweight division. You got a battle between Dustin Stoltzfus taking on Nursultan Ruziboev. Yeah, I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this fight either. I think Stoltzfus has okay power, but he's not a great striker. And when he fights somebody who has a lot of power on the feet, I think he can easily be finished. I also think Nursultan is a fraud. And I'm not saying that to be disrespectful, even though I know that's the only way that's going to come out. But I think he has a lot of power. He caught that kick of Ferreira, dropped him, jumped on him, finished him, and he's got a lot of KO power. Finished Cedric Dumas, but look at what Oleksiejczuk just did to Dumas. I think if Ruziboev and Oleksiejczuk fought each other, I think Oleksiejczuk would beat the shit out of Nursultan Ruziboev. I think Ruziboev is good when he's in the driver's seat, but when you start to push him back, when you start to get him on that back foot, I don't really think he has too much to offer in terms of his grappling or in terms of his striking. I think he could be broken, and maybe Stoltzfus can push him back. Maybe Stoltzfus can get a takedown. Maybe he gets on top of him and beats him up. We know he doesn't have really much to offer on the ground. He's more of a striker than a grappler. Like on the regional scene, he had some submissions and stuff, but I think in terms of higher level grappling, Stoltzfus is the better grappler. But I just don't think that's going to really come into play here, man. I think Stoltzfus is going to try to make it, technical, and then he's going to get hit with a big shot. He's going to come forward, probably crack Ruziboev, go for a takedown, doesn't get it, get into that brawl like he does in most of his fights, and I think Nursultan's just going to clip him with a right hand or a big left hook or an overhand and drop him and get him out of there. So I'm going to take Ruziboev to win. Give me Nursultan Ruziboev first round knockout over Dustin Stoltzfus. If you want to take Dustin, I would just take Dustin by sub because I think that's how he wins. If he can get Ruziboev on the ground, I think he can find a way to take his back and get a submission. But realistically, man, I don't see that happening, and I think Ruziboev has another favorable matchup like the UFC usually likes to give him, even though Buckley wasn't a favorable matchup. But, you know, the Makokano fight, clearly a favorable fight, even though it was short notice. And then the Dustin Stoltzfus fight, I think, again, it is a favorable fight for a guy who has as much power and finishing upside on the feet as Ruziboev against a guy who's been knocked out, who's been rocked, who's been wobbled, who's been hurt multiple times. So I think maybe there's a possibility that Stoltzfus could find a way to take the back or like slip a punch and get to the back and submit Ruziboev. I just don't think it's going to happen. So give me Ruziboev, Nursultan Ruziboev to win first round knockout against Dustin Stoltzfus. But the sub for Dustin is live if Ruziboev makes a mistake. And like I said, I don't think Ruziboev's that good, but I think this is a good matchup for him. So give me Nursultan, round 1 KO over Dustin Stoltzfus. All right, next fight up is in the lightweight division. You got a battle between Super Sodiq Yusuff taking on Myron Santos. I think a lot of people are going to look at the plus money on Sodiq Yusuff and are going to want to play it. I mean, the guy's fought the who's who in the UFC's featherweight division. He fought Diego Lopez, who fought for a title. He fought Arnold Allen. He fought, I mean, who am I forgetting off the top of my head? He fought Diego Lopez. He fought Arnold Allen. He fought Edson Jr. Barbosa. He fought, you know, the who's who of the division. Mike Davis on the Contender Series, who now is at, I think he's a lightweight now. I could be wrong. No, he's at 155. So, you know, in terms of UFC experience, all of it goes to Yusuff. I think Yusuff is the better boxer, and I think Myron Santos is the better striker. And there is a difference. I think Santos mixes up his calf kicks, mixes up the 1-2, the feints, really good hip feints, and throwing 1-2s off the leg feints, popping the jab, popping the 1-2, the check hook he caught Con Ofley with as he backed him up. Boom, he caught him with that hook, put him down, the 1-2, ripping the hook. I think that he has the opportunity to catch and hurt Sodiq Yusuff. I think that this fight is going to play out close. I think we've seen, based off the fight that I believe Santos lost, you know, in his last fight against Francis Marshall, we picked the underdog at like a plus 250, plus 260, and I think we got it right. I think Francis Marshall won that fight by rocking and hurting Santos bad at the end of the first round and using his grappling later in the fight to secure at least another round where we know he won the first round, whether they want to admit it or not. It was a robbery. I don't think Santos won. Is this a harder fight than Francis Marshall? Yes. So on paper, you should take Yusuff. But I think Francis Marshall is a little bit more durable than Sodiq Yusuff at this point. We've seen even in fights where he doesn't get finished that he can be rocked, he can be dropped, he can be hurt, but he still will come back and push that pace. This is only a 3-round fight. It's not a 5-rounder like he had against Barbosa. And Yusuff was going crazy early in that fight, ripping, you know, punches to the head, shots to the body, and was beating the crap out of Edson Barbosa. I think the better striker is Sodiq Yusuff. I think in terms of the boxing, I think the better competition level clearly goes to Sodiq Yusuff. But I could see a scenario where Yusuff just gets clipped coming in by the solid counter striker in Santos and gets put down. I could see him getting chopped with low kicks and stepping in and just getting cracked with a big shot and put down. I kind of think this is a must-win for Sodiq Yusuff. I'm surprised he's the underdog. I didn't necessarily expect it, but I think they are kind of low on Sodiq. I think Sodiq can win this fight. I like his 1-2. I like his high guard. I like that left hook, right hand. He kind of whips those bolo hooks. Not bolo hooks, but rips those hooks and then goes back to the straight punches. I think Yusuff can win this fight. I think he has all the weapons to win this fight. But I just kind of think that when this fight's all said and done, I think Santos is going to do enough to win on the scorecards. I think this fight probably goes the distance. If it finishes, I could see a KO on the side of Santos. I could see Sodiq clipping him early, hurting him, and knocking him out. Sodiq comes out hard like a house of fire in that first round. I think he can knock out Santos. If you're getting dropped by Francis Marshall, I think Sodiq can put your lights out. But part of me just thinks that Santos is going to play it safe. He's going to play on the outside. He's going to stick and move. I think Sadiq will land a couple big shots. Maybe he rocks him, but I think Santos will recover. But, man, as I'm talking about this fight, I'm having second thoughts. I could really see either guy winning this fight. Give me a second to think about it. Because, like I said, I'm having second thoughts as I'm talking about it. Man. Guys, I don't know. This is a tough one. I think in terms of distance striking, I would say I think Santos probably has the higher numbers if the fight goes 15 minutes. I think Sadiq can use his wrestling. I think Sadiq has more power. I think he has more opportunity to hurt him, but I also think Santos can clip and hurt Sadiq, who we've seen get rocked and wobbled multiple times. This fight is very close. It's very hard to predict. I'm going to go, man, I don't know. This is a hard one, guys. This is a hard one. Let me get a second to really collect my thoughts and think about this. I'm going to take Myron. I'm going to take Myron Santos. I was going to take Sadiq, but I just think he's a little bit vulnerable in terms of the striking and his defense. I think Santos hurts him one time. I think Sadiq hurts Myron, but I think Myron's able to recover, and I think Myron just outpoints him for over 15 minutes. I think it's a close fight, but again, I think this is a split decision where most of it plays out on the feet, and it's a kickboxing match. But I could see a KO either way, but I'm going to go split decision, 29-28, split decision for Myron Santos. I mean, clearly the judges love this guy, so I could see them giving him a close fight. I'd like Sadiq to win, so, you know, if you're listening to this in terms of betting, I wouldn't bet this fight. I want Sadiq to win. I'm a bigger fan of Sadiq Yusuff, but I think Myron's going to just outpoint him, stick behind the jab, pop the 1-2, keep him at distance, throw those front kicks, and chop the legs. And I think it's going to be close, but I think they're going to edge it towards Myron. So give me Myron Santos, 29-28, split decision in this fight. But I'd like Sadiq to win. I'm just not going to pick him. All right, next fight up is in the light heavyweight division, the co-main event of the evening between Rodolfo Bellato taking on Paul Bear Jew Craig. I'm going to be honest, guys, another fight that I don't think needs much of a breakdown. Paul Craig is submission or bust, but he always finds a way to get into those areas. However, I don't think Rodolfo Bellato is going to look to grapple. I think this is mainly going to be a striking fight. I think people are going to look at Paul Craig's performance against Bo Nickel, and they're going to think, well, he made it competitive. You know, he throws a lot of kicks to the head, to the body, mixes up some punches, but mainly a lot of kicks from the outside so he can roll into leg locks or get into takedown attempts and awkwardly try to set up a submission. I don't think much of that's going to come into play here. I think it's mainly going to play out on the feet. I think Paul Craig will get his takedown stuffed, and I think Rodolfo Bellato will knock him out. I don't really think we have to sit here and play this game for too long. If Bellato makes a mistake and Paul Craig ends up on top with Bellato on the ground, then that's going to be problems for Bellato. You know, if he ends up on the bottom, Paul Craig probably submits him. Maybe he gets to the top position and just ground and pounds him. You know, we know this guy can be hurt. Maybe Paul Craig lands one of his wheel kicks, drops Bellato, jumps on him, ground and pounds him, and submits him. If you're going to bet Paul Craig, just bet Craig by sub, because I think that's kind of, like I said, his only way to win is by submission. But I think Bellato knows that, and I think we're going to see mainly staying at a distance. Then when he finds the openings, if Craig misses a shot, he's going to counter. He's going to get in his face. He's going to start to throw those 1-2s. He's going to start to rip body shots. He's going to throw uppercuts up the middle. He's going to start to put the volume on him. And I think he's just going to knock Paul Craig out. I don't necessarily think it's in round one because I don't see Bellato as being a guy who has like a round one knockout upside. He's not like a one-hitter quitter KO guy. But his boxing is decent. He leaves himself open. You know, he got dropped by Ihor Potieria, who's not very good at all, but then he came back and ended up finishing him in that fight. I think Craig, like I said, it's kind of a situation where I think Bellato has to slip on a banana peel and give Craig a position that he shouldn't be giving up, and then Craig can find a way to grab his neck, lock up a triangle, etc., etc. Like maybe Bellato knocks him down, and then he gets caught in a triangle, kind of similar to the Magomed Ankalaev and the Jamal Hill situation. But I don't think that's going to happen. I think Bellato knows that you can't go to the ground with Paul Craig if you want to really take away his chances of winning. Maybe he rocks him with a wheel kick because he does throw some spinning kicks. But again, I don't really think that happens. I think this fight primarily plays out on the feet. I think Bellato keeps his range and distance until he knows he can get into range without Craig really having any success with the takedowns. Start peppering him with the jab, start throwing the 1-2, start ripping shots to the body. I think he hurts Paul Craig with a shot in the second round, rips to the body, hits him back upstairs, and finishes him up against the cage. Give me Rodolfo Bellato by second round TKO. I think he's going to put Paul Craig away, which is something that, isn't that huge of a surprise at this point. So, give me Rodolfo Bellato to find the TKO against the fence in round 2. Avoid the grappling and showcase his striking. I don't think Bellato's that good either, but I think he's good enough to beat Paul Craig. Stay away from the grappling, and you're probably going to win. So give me Rodolfo Bellato round 2 KO over Paul Craig. And now we're at the main event of the evening in the welterweight division. You have Gilbert Burns versus Michael Morales. This is a good main event and a good fight. And a lot of people are going to count out Gilbert Burns, and I understand why. I think Gilbert Burns can hurt a guy like Michael Morales. Morales is a good striker. He moves well. He moves in and out. He throws good combinations, a solid jab, a good check hook, the 1-2 down the middle. Can throw unorthodox shots like how he rocked Neil Magny off that clinch break with the spinning elbow. And I think those unorthodox strikes are really what's going to catch Gilbert Burns off guard. I don't think you're going to hurt him with a traditional strike. I think it's going to be like a bolo uppercut or a knee in the clinch or an elbow off the break in the clinch that's going to rock Gilbert Burns and, set you up for a TKO finish. I think the better grappler is Gilbert. I think the smart idea would be to get in on the hips, try to take down Morales and get to his back or get to the top position and look for a submission. I think on the feet, Burns does have power, and I think Morales, he's decent in terms of defense, but he leaves his chin there to be hit. And I would not be surprised if Burns, let him come forward, gave him like that false sense of confidence, and then just cracked him with a big overhand right and knocked him out. I wouldn't be surprised if he cracked him with an overhand. I wouldn't be surprised if he hit him with a big left hook on a counter, like maybe he slips to the inside of his cross, boom, lands that left hook and drops him and hurts Morales. I could see a scenario where he hurts Morales with a big shot, jumps on him and gets a submission. I think there's that possibility for Burns, but at this point, I don't think Gilbert Burns has it in his wheelhouse to compete at a high level against these younger fighters. Yes, he almost won against JDM. I think JDM won round 1, Burns won round 2, but then in round 3, JDM, kicked off the cage after Burns took him down, worked his way back up, and then landed the knee and TKO'd him. I think there could be a similar scenario where maybe Burns takes down Morales. Morales defends the subs. He's winning on control time. Morales gets up to his feet, lands a big knee or lands a spinning elbow that hurts Gilbert Burns and drops him, and he finishes him off. I think at this point, if you rock Gilbert Burns, you're probably going to put him away. I think Burns, like I said, can rock Michael Morales. Morales does leave his chin there. He has okay defense. He guards up. He moves well. But when he throws his combinations, he does kind of leave his head there. So I wouldn't be surprised if Burns landed a big overhand. I wouldn't be surprised if Burns landed a big left hook and hurt Michael Morales and put him down. But I kind of think that at this point, the UFC know what they're doing. And yes, Burns is a tough fighter. Yes, Burns gave Khamzat Chimaev his toughest fight to date. And it's getting more and more impressive. Few fights that Chimaev has, but in every fight he has, he looks pretty good. So it's looking impressive. The win or the loss to JDM, he got finished, but he might have won that decision had JDM not gotten back up, and then he'd have a win over a guy who would go on to become the welterweight champion and defeat Belal Muhammad. So, I don't think you can fully count out Gilbert Burns. I think if you're going to play Burns, it's probably an inside the distance, more than likely by submission, because we haven't seen much of the grappling game of Michael Morales. But I don't really think Burns is going to take him down. And I think if he does, I think Morales will use his hips, he'll use the cage, and will have to try to wall walk his way up and then dig the underhooks and circle out. You don't want to be using your hips to kind of work up the cage and give up your back, because Burns will jump it and take your back, or he'll take you down, trip you out, and have you fall back into him taking your back. That's a bad position for Michael Morales. But I think Morales knows what to do. I think the grappling is being a little overblown for Burns because I don't think he's going to use it as much. And if he does try, I think Morales is going to be able to work his way back up to the feet, stop the takedowns, and circle back out. I think Burns will land some good shots, but I think eventually Morales is going to land a big uppercut, or he's going to land a flying knee. He's going to land some big strike, some big extravagant strike, a flying knee, a big uppercut, an elbow over the top in the clinch, and I think he crumbles Gilbert Burns, jumps on him, and finishes him off with a TKO. I'm going with the Ecuadorian in his first UFC main event. Give me Michael Morales to remain undefeated and defeat Gilbert Burns via a third-round TKO. I don't think it's going to be in round 1. I think Burns will have some success. I think Burns is going to crack Morales, but I think Morales will recover. I think Burns will take him down, but I think Morales will use the cage to work back up while in the process not giving up his back. And I think he's going to get hit with, like I said, a big strike, a knee, an elbow off the break in the clinch, a big uppercut. He's going to get dropped. Morales is going to jump on him and finish him off. I don't think he's able to recover. Give me Michael Morales in the main event to win via third-round TKO over Gilbert Durinho Burns. All right, that's it for my UFC Vegas 106 preview, predictions, and breakdown. Don't forget to leave me your predictions, your favorite bets, your favorite underdogs, your fight of the night, your fighter of the night to watch. Anything you want to talk about related to this card or related to martial arts or mixed martial arts in general, drop it down in the comment section below. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and smash the notification bell with a big double elbow, a left elbow into a right uppercut or upward elbow to make sure you don't miss any future uploads from the premier mixed martial arts and pro wrestling channel on YouTube. I'm your host, Double M, and I'm out.